This week on What Do You Got, we delve into the simple but complicated topic of voting.
And what happens when friends fight.
Oh.
You're listening to Bro Down Podcast all fucking day. Oh, yeah.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Bro Down Podcast. I'm Tim Fulton.
I'm Andy Smith.
And this is What Do You Got? What Do You Got's a little segment where we each come to the table with the topic that the other guy doesn't know about. We spring it on each other and we chit-chat about it for a little while. Andy, you're up first. What do you got?
Voting.
Oh, well, that's simple.
Okay, so
I wonder why that's on your mind.
I don't want to get any political one side v other side or anything like that. No celebrity death match.
Fair.
I just want to talk about voting
Okay.
and how it should be simple, how it's not simple, ways
Yep.
that we could maybe improve it, give a little bro advice on maybe how to improve it, and some of the pitfalls about what are the negatives to things that are going on with it now.
So I'm very, how do I phrase this? I'm very opinionated about this, actually.
Okay.
Like, strongly opinionated.
Picked a good one.
Yeah, you did pick a good one, but I don't think I'm opinionated in the way that you would expect.
Okay.
I know that this is going to be a fairly serious topic, so I'm going to occasionally just like.
Okay, thanks for watching, everybody.
I know that a lot of people, the big thing on everybody's mind is voter fraud right now, right?
Yeah.
Is it happening? Is it not happening? To what pedigree is it happening? And first and foremost, I'm sure it is happening to some degree. Because I'm an idiot bro, who knows what that degree is?
Yes.
I don't know how you solve voter fraud completely. That's one thing I don't want to touch, which I know it's kind of what what you want to get into, but like I just don't know.
It's weird. Part of the reason I brought this up is because this is kind of unprecedented with how we voted.
Yeah.
This term. It's never been. I mean, they have had like quote mail-ins before and all
Yeah.
this stuff, but that's where the main controversy is lying, right? And not just like, ways that people can either fill them out or mail in additional ones, or people at the polls can change things or add in things, but also like when they get there. That's another thing that I didn't think of either that I saw that people are complaining about.
Yeah, and with the mail-in voting, they're really going to have to rethink how they do everything, because a lot of people voted in early October. I got my ballot like early October. Everyone in New Jersey got a ballot.
Some
Everyone
people
in
didn't
First-
get them until late October.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
But my point being is that a lot of people voted before the whatchamacallits, where they fight verbally. See, this
Oh
is
yes, the debates.
the debates. Thank you. This is
We don't watch politics.
This is the type of show you guys are watching, or listening to. So they definitely have to change up at least how early the debates happen and stuff like that. I think mail-in voting overall is a good thing. I think we're all victims of exaggerated news headlines. I'm sure that a lot of it is true. You've seen things where votes were being tossed out. You see things where they're not getting there on time, all that
Yeah.
other stuff. But I think the large majority of it was successful. And I'm going to preface this with, I think one of the most important things in our current society, is that the right to have an opinion and vocalize that opinion.
Yeah.
So if you are someone who commits voter fraud for one reason or the other, go fuck yourself. Because
Well,
it's the foundation of everything we hold dear.
Well, that's one of the things I was going to say. I don't know what the penalty is for tampering with votes or voter fraud or whatever, each different degree of those.
It's a federal offense. You can go to prison for that.
Yes, but what I'm saying is how many times is it pursued? Like, there's things that are federal offenses, but
Yeah.
there's also things that are federal offenses that don't get pursued a lot.
That's true. That's
So
true.
I don't know if it, the only reason I think off the top of my head, I haven't really thought about this a ton, which is why I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah.
Is that you're not if that is going on, and I'm sure it does go on to whatever degree it goes on,
Yeah,
is whatever.
to an
But
extent.
yeah, if it does go on, I do think that if you are if it's proven that you're intentionally committing voter fraud in one way or another, I do think that the punishment should be enough so that it definitely deters people from attempting it.
Yes.
Not just trying to, you know what I mean? Like, because if it was just a slap on the wrist offense, I think a lot of people would try to do it. And it is a federal offense, but I don't know how often they pursue it, because it almost seems like it's almost looked at like, yeah, some people are going to try and we have to accept that.
Yeah, so there has to be something that's possible. I don't know what.
I don't know either. I just know
Yeah.
that if you ask somebody, like, what would you do if you saw your ballot being thrown out?
I'd freak out.
You'd be upset.
You'd be very upset.
Yeah, it shouldn't have. And I think that especially part of the whole thing is that because it was a mail-in ballot, because of this whole volatile situation with the two candidates, it just made for a perfect storm of controversy.
Yo, if I have to listen to months of people bullshitting politics out of their asses, I want to get my 2 cents in. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to put in all that effort
Exactly.
for nothing.
But I did like the way that they do it, where you have to go in, because if it's computerized and you have a little button, it just seems that it's less fallible.
There's a lot of issues with computerizing it. A lot of technical issues.
Yes.
A lot of issues. One of them is that you have to prove the way voting is being handled. So you have. So
do you mean technical issues in what way? Technical issues meaning like there can be mistakes, or technical issues meaning like it's hard to commit the fraud?
Technical issues in that you can make mistakes, and technical issues in that it's not legally possible. Like, a company has, if you are registered to register votes, I guess, I don't know how to phrase that.
Yeah.
You have to be able to prove the way you were counting votes.
Okay.
So if you come up with a computer program that handles that for you, then you can show them, this is how it works, here's all the code, blah, blah, blah. But there is no guarantee that the code that you are showing them is going to be the same code that you are uploading to all the servers and all the computers and blah, 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 blah. It could be manipulated and altered and edited. So that right there becomes difficult. Another reason is that you have to be able to prove the person who is voting is the person. If I'm at a computer screen, it's not like the same thing as having a login for a bank account.
Well, I was meaning like voting as like you go to a place to vote, show your license, sign the paper, and then you go into the little booth and that's a computer, but you are proving because of their license and all that
you are you.
And they scratch you off. That's how they used to do it before this whole pandemic thing. And one of the things is like, we know what each state has their own way of voting, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, would it be possible for the government to basically design a program, allow the states to adopt that?
No, and that's the problem, because anyone has the ability to edit computer programs, more or less.
But what I'm saying is if you had this thing monitored and controlled in a certain way, because the way that I look at it is if they can do it with banks, I mean, people try to do it, but if somebody fucks with a large bank's computers, they will find them.
Well,
so it can be done.
I mean, it can be. See, that's two different things. Right there, the bank is in control of its own software, right? But imagine if the bank was like, all right, we created software, we're going to give it to all of you guys, and you handle everything yourselves. And
so maybe there needs to be almost like a revamping of having maybe technicians from the federal government assisting people from the states, and basically coming to an agreement of saying, look, listen, we will run the operation.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, because it just seems like I like the freedom of doing it differently, but at the same time that creates a lot of controversy.
Yeah.
And a lot of issues.
And you get really complicated really fast, because then you start encroaching on what is states' rights and what are federal rights.
Yes.
Because the states have the rights to open and fair elections in and amongst themselves.
Yes.
All the time, they run elections simultaneously. So now you're saying, well, we know you're running an election for the federal government and your town, but you have to do it this way. And maybe the town is like, we don't want to do it that way. Well, you have to, because that's how it's set up. And they're like, well, too bad. Well, you can't do that. And one of the reasons, and this is how this is the topic that I'm a little bit more intelligent on, is the way we vote, and it's slowly starting to shift for the better. Right now, our system is called first past the post. If you and I were running an election against each other, the first person to get over 50% wins, more or less. It gets a little bit more complicated with the electoral college and all that other bullshit, but whoever gets to 51st wins, basically. It's a terrible system. It's terrible. Horrible.
Are you talking about like the first person that reaches 50%? Because that's 50. All you need is the majority.
Yes.
Yeah.
50%
of the registered voters
Yes.
of that region.
Yes.
Yeah.
The better way, there's a number of different ways to vote. One of the better ways that is slowly getting traction in this company is called ranked choice voting. It might not be called that verbatim, but it's the style. So instead of saying, I want this candidate to win, when you get your ballot, instead of making an X, you rate them 1 through however many. And by doing that, how do I describe this? It solves a lot of problem that picking one person brings up.
What if there's only 2 people?
Then you only vote once.
Yeah.
So it's not a problem. But like the presidency is a big thing. To give an example,
So how would that come into play?
So there's three big problems, in my opinion, that is plaguing our current political system.
No. Okay, but what I'm asking before we get into the 3 major things, how does the ranking 1 through 4, like would you do each rank 1 is a certain amount of votes percentage-wise versus rank 2, 3, and 4?
Yeah. So imagine for a minute that you, myself, and your brother are running for president.
Okay.
And there's ranked choice voting. Say none of us get a majority vote. So none of us reach 50%. Say, just for argument's sake, you get 40%, your brother gets 40%, and I get 10%. No one wins. So what happens? Well, because I'm in last place, they eliminate my candidacy altogether. And then all the people who voted for me, whoever they chose second, will now get the votes.
Okay.
And by doing that, and just for argument's sake, we'll make it simple and say all 20%.
That way you don't have to do a revote.
Correct. That will say all 20% go to you. Now you win. That's how it would work.
Okay.
And the reason that's important is because of the 3 problems. One, voter turnout this year was extremely high, but historically has been getting lower and lower and lower and lower and lower because people are super disinterested because people they don't feel like their voices matter, more or less. It's always the status quo.
Yeah.
The second problem is what's it called? The spoiler effect. When, again, say you, myself, and your brother all run for president, right?
Yeah.
Your platform is I love apples, and your brother's platform is I love oranges. And then I come in, and I'm some no-name schmuck, and I'm like, yeah, I really love Granny Smith apples. I love Granny Smith apples.
Okay.
So we go to election day, right? Your brother gets 40% of the votes. You get 30% of the votes, and I get we'll change that up a little. Your brother gets 45% of the votes. You get 35% of the votes, and I get the remaining 30. I think it is 25, 20, whatever it is.
Okay.
Who wins? Your brother wins. But that's unfortunate because if you look at yours and mine, more people voted for apples than oranges.
Yes.
So that's the spoiler effect, that I basically stole votes from you. And it became a worst case scenario that oranges won despite that there are more apples out there.
Yes.
Even though I'm a little bit more extreme that I only like Granny Smith apples, at least you like apples. In ranked choice voting, people who had voted for me would probably have voted for you.
I see what you're saying. That makes a lot of sense.
It does make a lot of sense. So that way the apples stay in power, and it solves the other problem because now people have an actual elected reason to go. Just because I lost, you can turn around and say, holy shit, 20% of the population loved Granny Smith apples. Not just apples, they love Granny Smith apples.
Yeah.
And that's going to matter. That's going to matter to your policy. That's going to matter to what you do. Maybe you're going to pay more attention to Granny Smith apples because now you know that a large chunk of people care about that.
Yeah.
And it does also open up the door to more third-party candidates getting into office. I don't think it's going to be as significant as what people would really anticipate. I think the 2-party system is kind of the third pillar.
I
that
think
is shitty.
if they opened up that ranking system, I think
Yeah.
more people would vote other people first.
Yeah, and it's super annoying because like, if you vote for a third party, it doesn't matter what side you're on. Republicans will be like, "Oh, you're giving it to the Democrat."
Yeah, you're
The
saying you're
Democrats-
wasting your vote basically, and or most people vote for who they don't want in more than who they want.
Yeah, and that's one of the problems because your voice should matter. You should voice your opinion. Maybe your opinion isn't Republican or Democrat. Maybe
Yeah.
your opinion is something fucking crazy.
Yeah, but you
But you
kind
should
of
still
are,
be
I
allowed
guess.
to voice it.
Yeah, you kind of are not wasting your vote, but it is in a sense wasting your vote, sort of.
And that's what first past
Depending
the post
on how you
does.
look at it.
Instead of voicing your opinion, it becomes a numbers game.
See, now this is another thing that always gets talked about with the Electoral College, right? So each state, and this is, I'm talking way out of school here, but each state has a certain amount of people that are in the Electoral College.
Yes.
And it's a winner-take-all system.
For the most, what do you mean in the states? Or
Most states are
most?
winner-take-all.
I think there's 2 that aren't, but most states are.
Two that aren't, they're allowed, I believe, to vote as they see fit, but
They tend to.
I don't think it's happened more than one time
Yeah.
that they haven't done what the state has voted. Now, some states, if you look at, how they voted, it could be the majority of the counties have voted this way, but the populations live in the city or whatever, and they vote the other way,
Yeah.
and then that's who wins the state. Do you think that the states should not be winner take all, and those electoral college members should be distributed throughout the counties on an even populous scale? Or do you think that because they draw the county lines differently, I'm assuming that's how they count the votes, that's what they
Yeah.
mean. But again, there is the whole population thing, because if you have 5 people, not that there's ever going to be 5 people, but you have 5 people living in a county, do they get a whole vote versus 10,000 people living in the next county? It's the same vote, but it's not the same representation.
Yeah.
But the counter to that would be, like there's a lot of people in the country that don't make up a big portion of the population, but they make up a big gear in what makes this country run, like farmers. If you know what I'm saying, like there's
Yeah.
people that can be forgotten about that are a big part of the country, but they don't really get a vote if they don't live in a state that has.
So you're nailing it on the head in 2 different ways, right? First and foremost, the city versus country aspect is one of the reasons. There's really 2 primary reasons that the electoral came into play. One is that back in the day, we didn't have rapid systems to communicate with each other.
Yeah.
So on election night, we could easily say 100% of New Jerseyans have voted. This is who they voted for. That's our candidate. But it would take weeks.
Yeah.
So the Electoral College was the summation. They would all get together, and then they would vote for president, because that's how it had to have been done. It was you would literally send one person to be like, go
Yeah.
do it for us, because New Jersey can't show up to a bill.
Well, they used to vote, from my understanding, and when it first started, you used to be able to just say it out loud, and you had to say it publicly. Because I watched a video. I get all my information on YouTube, so it's.
I
right.
get a lot of mine off YouTube.
But it was
too,
one of
so-
those things where like these nerdy guys make history videos,
Yeah.
and they're doing it with the best possible interest, so that it's not like they have a political agenda. They're just kind of
Yes.
like excited about history.
Yes.
But I guess in the beginning it was kind of like you had to say your vote out loud at a fair, like a voting fair. And then after the whole like voter intimidation stuff started coming in, that's when they originally put each different party on a different color card.
Oh.
And then that's why the rule came for booths, because people could still see the color card that you were voting, and they knew you were voting for X party or Y party. And then eventually it became the blanketed white card and the booth.
Yeah.
So that people wouldn't have to know who you were voting for.
I vaguely remember that you had to say something, and I vaguely remembered that there was someone from each party there.
Yes.
Excuse me, but I'm sure that in voter intimidation, it's still into play.
Yes.
I'm sure that was there. That sounds accurate. I have no idea. Who fucking cares?
Yeah. So how do you think or feel about the whole like winner take all for the states? Do you think they should redraw the lines and divide it up differently because the thing is, like, if there's, say, the Electoral College has 30 votes for a state, but the state is divided up into 50 different counties. There's not one per county, but at the same time, they're not an even population in all those counties either.
Yeah, and see, that's where it currently is.
Gets tricky.
It's very tricky. So the way you're describing it, the Electoral College, the other reason for it was that it was meant to protect the smaller states.
Yes.
So the way the Electoral College is granted votes is that you get it based off of population plus 2.
You have to have minimum 3.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you have 1 because your state has a small population, you get 3. It's 1 plus 2. Whatever state you are, you get how it's based off of your population plus 2. So theoretically, the states with smaller population, their votes should matter more than the other ones.
But that's not across the board, though, because some states don't. They have a higher population count per electoral vote than others.
Yeah, and that's why.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, some states might have, you have to have 100,000 per electoral thing, and then others might be 150 per.
Are you sure?
Yeah, because I just looked up some stuff before
Yeah.
coming up with this, and
Yeah.
there's this YouTube channel who's a lawyer. It's called Legal Eagle. I'm sure a lot of people actually
Yeah.
heard of it. But he basically was talking about California, and he was saying that California, they hold 12%, let's say 12% of the country's population, but they only hold 10% of the country's electoral college votes.
Okay.
And it's because they're, for whatever way they did the math, it's not even definitely across the board the way that the numbers work out. It makes sense for the smaller states.
Yeah, that was the original reason why. But the problem is that I'm kind of in the boat that the Electoral College should be abolished altogether. I think it's kind of an outdated system, but I do still kind of feel nervous for those middle ground states. But those middle ground states are still ignored.
Yes.
The-
See, that's why I'm saying with I don't think popular vote is a good idea.
I don't hate it. And the reason I don't hate it is because if it is popular vote, the middle states are ignored altogether right now anyway.
Yeah.
They're ignored. The only states that really get any sort of traction are Texas, Florida, North
swing
Carolina,
states.
all the swing states, Pennsylvania, blah, 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 blah. So those flyover states don't matter right now. They'll continue to not matter is the problem, because the people in if we were to change to a popular vote, you would be looking at targeting the big cities. That's
Yeah.
it. LA, New York.
I don't think that if we're trying to fix the system, though, like I was talking before as an example with the farmers,
Yeah.
you're almost purposely ignoring people that don't live in cities.
Yeah.
And what I don't like about that is that all the people that are electing are going to be people that live in cities want only.
Yeah. And no, I agree with you. I think that's a problem because people who are in cities don't necessarily understand the problems that a farmer
Exactly.
faces.
Just like a farmer wouldn't understand problems
Yeah.
in cities.
Exactly.
There's got to be, like, I understand and I respect the reasoning behind the Electoral College. It's meant to protect the country as a whole group instead of basically just saying, oh, people with more population, that's who gets who they want.
Yeah.
And again, if you talk to 100 farmers or 100 people from the city, you know, from the election results, you'd think that they probably think more the same way than they think differently.
Yeah.
Because they're a group, whether or not they want to agree or not, they are a group in a certain way because they both live in this type of environment.
Yeah. Do you know what I don't get? What I don't really have too much to comment on you because you're pinpointing exactly what I
Yeah.
So on election night, and I'm not blaming any one side because I'm sure it happened both ways, but I remember watching, who was it? I think it was Connecticut. I think they had reported like 10% of their vote.
Yeah.
It was in. The votes were in, but only 10% had been counted. And the Electoral College had already voted for whoever they voted for.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, they're not a swing state. Everyone knows that it's going to be the correct vote. But how do they do that? How did they do that?
Yeah.
Don't they at least have to wait for a 50% margin?
There,
I don't get it. That's
I agree. You know what's weird, and it's not. I think it's a shame that it feels to me the whole culture of a lot of things in this country maybe it's nostalgia, or maybe it's because that's how we read about it and we like to put a nice cherry on top of history.
Yeah.
But it feels like back in the day, there was a sense of like just a little bit of respect for the process
Yeah.
and respect for like the entire thing. And on a whole, across the board, it feels like a lot of that is lost, and that they're skipping steps just to skip steps, because it's like, well, what's the point anyway? It's like, well, we could say that with a lot of things, but
Yeah.
then you lose the whole. It doesn't feel as pure as it should.
It was Vermont, not Connecticut. But yeah, it does. You're right. It doesn't feel as pure.
Yeah, because
As
it
it
makes
should.
people feel, whether it's going that way or not.
Yeah.
It makes people feel like their vote doesn't fucking matter, and it might not fucking matter because
And that's,
you're not in the right state that you want to be in to vote for who you want to vote for.
Yeah.
But when you start calling things early like that or whatever, to me, it's almost like you're
It's disenfranchising.
you're disenfranchised. You're muddying the water,
Yeah.
because how do you do that?
Yeah. I don't know. I said this once and I'll say it again.
It's perspective or perception.
It's perception. I blame the media. Like,
Yeah.
not 100%, but I blame them, like, rampantly. I mean, I blame them, like, not a lot. They want-
feed off negativity. They feed off controversy.
yeah.
They don't
And
feed off so-and-so save so-and-so. They feed off
They love
plane
it.
crashes and whatnot.
They love it. They get
Yeah.
off on it.
It's ratings. But at the same time, dude, we have to look in the mirror, because we are the consumers of
Look at it.
media.
Yeah. I know. I wholeheartedly agree. I'm really bad at. I'm addicted to that Reddit website. That Reddit website. Am I fucking?
How old are you?
80? You young whippersnappers.
Go ahead. Excuse
Well,
me.
I'm addicted to Reddit, but it's one of the most hostile, poisonous places out there.
Yeah.
And like I can feel myself getting riled up, but it's one of those things where like when I sit down at a computer and I want to just bullshit and do nothing for 10 minutes, Reddit.com.
Yeah.
It replaced like the Facebook.com.
Yeah. Part of the reason why I brought this up is like you're one of the few people I can talk to about like touchy subjects where it doesn't go off the rails, and it's basically like we're trying to have a constructive conversation as opposed to a toxic conversation. And that's another thing I think is lost nowadays, where people kind of end up just always arguing and they never get anywhere.
Yeah.
They just kind of keep, they have their point. They don't want to get away from their point, and a lot of people don't even really know what it is, but they just don't want to. They don't want to secede, or they don't want to compromise or anything like that. And especially with voting, I think there is a lot of ways that it can be improved upon. I don't know what they are,
Yeah.
but the one thing that I do know is that anytime you have mass amounts of people, or people in general, involved in doing something, there's room for error.
Yes.
Whether that person is running a computer. Now, there's things that you can do to mitigate the error, but
When you're counting 160 million votes,
exactly.
something is going to happen.
And for people to say, or states to say, or whatever, that there's no flaw in the system and that there's no changes that need to be made, I think is irresponsible.
I agree.
I think that it's not it's disingenuous to the people that live in that state.
And the people know. They feel lied to because they know it's
Yeah.
not 100% perfect.
Yes, and
It's good.
yeah, and I think that that's one of the reasons why so many people didn't go out and vote in the past couple elections, because they don't think that it really matters. Like, they don't feel that their vote is counted, or because of the winner take all system, there's only like 5 or 7 states that people actually think that their vote will mean something at the end.
Yeah. I do got to say, one of the best conversations I had, political conversation. Imagine I was like, this was the best conversation I ever had. What was it about? Politics. One of the best political conversations I ever had. I went out with my friend Sam. Hi, Sam. And her friend joined us, and it was like one of these outdoor drinking places.
Okay.
And I promise I'm not going to push it on anybody, but I'm libertarian,
Okay.
which everyone doesn't know what the fuck that is. And the guy who I hadn't met didn't know what it was. And we spent 20 minutes. He was just asking me questions. He's like, well, what is it? What does that mean? What do you feel about this? What do you feel about that? And we didn't agree on a lot of topics, but it was never argumentative, not once. And it was like finally someone just being like, what is that? And why?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I can understand. And what about this? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it was like a civil, like it was just informational. It was a great discussion, and we moved on with our lives.
Yeah.
And now he knew something new.
It is a very fine line, right? Because depending on what subjects and what things people feel strongly about, I mean, this country was kind of founded on different political beliefs and us not wanting to agree. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the same time, there is that sense of like, you know, there's a lack of respect anymore with once somebody hears something out of somebody's mouth about politics that they don't like, they immediately almost pigeonhole that person into a specific group with everyone else that they've ever known who's had that opinion.
Yeah.
And they associate them with all the bad aspects of
Yes.
that person.
Yes.
And it's very unfair because you could have an opinion on baseball, what team you like. That doesn't make somebody not talk to you. That doesn't make somebody not invite you to family parties. That doesn't make somebody,
I don't know.
go
Have
out
you
with you
met
on
Philly
Facebook.
fans? They're all exactly the same.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying,
They're
though?
all assholes.
It's one of those weird subjects
Yeah,
where
it is.
there is not a lot of tolerance if you are very into certain beliefs or certain political whatever. And it's a shame because the way that I think a lot of things get hashed out is by conversations.
Yeah, it is.
Honest conversations. Now, if you have an honest conversation, you might never change your mind at all. But when you go into a conversation with the thought of like, if you ask somebody, you know, what's your policy or what's your belief on X, and they say my belief on X is Y, and they say, okay, what would I have to present to you to get you to change it to Z? And they say, there's nothing you can ever tell me that would ever make my decision change that.
Yeah.
There's no reason to talk anymore. Because if you're even going to show them saying like, you know, the sky's blue, like even if God himself or herself came down and said, the sky's actually green. And they're like, nope,
No, it ain't.
nope, it's not green. So there is that weird thing where people just are so married to whatever their ideas are. Now, there's people that are married to their ideas, but they're not willing to not get divorced from them if they aren't presented with an actual thing that they've never been exposed to, or they don't never look at that side of the coin. But so many people are very quick to be like, oh, you don't agree with me? Well, you can get the fuck out of my life.
Yeah.
Or whatever. And it's the same thing with voting too.
It is.
This is like another divide coming between the two-party system.
Yeah. And it's only getting worse. The other thing I think that we can do to improve our system, and I know this sounds corny, is to improve our education system.
Yeah.
It's failing.
We don't want to make dummies.
No, we don't want to make dummies, and we don't want dummies to vote. But we want everyone to be allowed to vote.
That could be a whole nother, what do you got?
Spring it on me.
You know what my biggest thing is
What?
with education system that I don't like and I never understood because we were kind of a part of it.
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna mention it real quick and we're gonna go to your topic because this is dragging on.
Yeah.
But I think it's important. The whole the No Kid Left Behind thing and the curriculum becoming like the mainstay in all this stuff, and we saw it because that happened during our time in school, and the idea of it on paper works, right? You're not going to let any kid fail out, and you're going to make sure that they learn and all this stuff. But the problem is that some people don't learn or don't want to learn, and they're slower at learning, or they're quicker or more advanced, whatever. But what ended up happening is you just push them through. The teachers have to give these reports. They give the reports, and if they have too many kids failing, they might get fired.
Yeah.
So they basically don't fail kids that need to repeat classes for their own benefit.
It was
An utter failure, and it's still an utter failure. And instead of it almost grinds the groove into teachers' heads of like, instead of actually having to focus on certain things, it's just like, listen, for my job, I got to pass everyone.
Yeah, we're focusing on the wrong thing. It's one of those things that you're focusing on the symptom and not the problem itself.
Yeah.
You're curing the failure rate, but you're not curing on education.
Yeah, it's like you looking at the end result. Like everyone got 100. It's like, yeah, but they all copied off her.
I'm gonna pause you there because
Yes,
this
let's
is
go to
going
your
be-
topic.
No, you know what? We're running long, guys. Let us know what you think in the comments down below about the voting system. What would you change if you were in charge of it? We want to know. Stay tuned for next week when we talk about fighting with friends.
Okay.
I'm hanging on to that. And don't forget to go to brodownpro.com. We have new Brodown stuff coming out all the time. On Good Friday through Cyber Monday, we're going to have a 10% off the entire store. So don't forget,
Scotty's on fire.
that store is on fire. We'll
Yeah.
catch you guys next time.
You're listening to Bro Down Podcast all fucking day.